See people coming in all the time. Bit of a busy one, bit of a hot one today. What's it like over with you, Han?
It's sweaty, very hot over here. Very humid.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I'm glad you've changed out of your vest, Chris. Nobody needs to see that tonight.
I got an email today said at no point should you wear a vest for this August, no matter how hot it gets. Good evening, everyone. As we start to see the attendees coming in all of the time now, so the numbers are jumping out. If it's okay with everyone, I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes because we've got a number of people registered for this session. So I'm going to give it a couple of minutes for everyone to jump online, as is the nature of these things. And I still manage to do it, to turn up late to virtual meetings. So as is the nature of people, I missed the first couple of minutes. So we'll just give it a couple of minutes. Sorry. I think one of the downsides to all this virtual meetings is you don't get out as much. I certainly haven't been out as much from the virtual office as much as I should do, especially on days like this. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm still getting used to this technology. People say you must be used to it by now, all these webinars. Still, I don't know click where to press, so do bear with us. Or bear with me, should I say.
I'm not allowed to do any clicking anymore after I moved Finn on too quickly in our webinar.
No, he wasn't happy about that. He still spoke to him today. He's still talking about it. Okay, I think we've got quite a few of us in on this one, so it's good that it's started to slow down. I think there's still a few more people to join us. So, but we will make a start because we're a couple of minutes past 7 now. First of all, thanks very much for joining us this evening. Appreciate it. It is an absolutely lovely evening out there for most of us. So really do appreciate your time. This is the next of the Support Your Club webinar. So we had a series. We had a break for a little bit. We went out, asked people what they'd like, and just a sort of a bite-sized chunk of what people in the world of clubs and clubs development would like. So Hannah and Finn delivered a session on physical literacy, which was really well received. We did one last week or a couple of weeks ago now around creating cashless clubs and contactless, etc. And sort of really good level of engagement and interaction, which is nice, and good level of follow-up afterwards. And it's good to see that we're able to put these sessions on the YouTube channel, so that people can watch them afterwards. And then we always say it's a great resource to have. So that's a real positive. Just to run you through a little bit of the format. It'll be myself and Hannah talking for around 20-25 minutes, depending on how much we whittle on for, before we run through some questions. So as I always say, before we get started, just run through a little bit of the housekeeping. You are all on mute by default, and that's for no particular reason, but these sessions work best when we don't get a lot of background noise. I think the first couple of webinars we did, Han, and there was all sorts of dogs barking in the background and stuff. So everyone's on mute, and we can't see you. So it's a bit of a strange experience this end. So if you put a nice frock on for this evening, then it's a little bit wasted at the moment because everyone's cameras are off. So we'll run through, as I say, Hannah and myself will run through a bit of a presentation. These sessions always work best when there's some interaction, there's some questions. So we'll try and run a couple of polls throughout the session. And we'll try and ask the questions. We'll probably save the questions to the end because that seems to work best in the format, and we'll cover off some of those questions because sometimes when we stop for questions, it's things that we will cover a little bit later on in the presentation if that makes sense. So we'll try and cover all of those questions towards the end. There are a couple of ways that you can ask questions at the end. If you do it throughout, you should see the speech bubbles or the sort of the chat bubbles, and you can ask a question in that, and there should be a question on your control panel, normally on the right hand side of your screen, or towards the end when we're running through. If you particularly want to get a point across or ask a question that you think everyone will enjoy it, then you can stick your hand up at the end, and we'll unmute you, we'll come to you, and that also works really well. As I say, we'll try and run through a couple of polls throughout this evening. So if you could get involved with those polls, he says confidently, not that I've ever pulled it off, pulled a poll off without clicking the wrong button. But if you could try and vote and take part, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Just to run through, my name's Chris Moss, Head of Development and Participation for Welsh Athletics. Been at Welsh Athletics quite a long time, so I've got a bit of experience in working with lots of different clubs, both large and small, on track, off track, just around the area of sort of club development and planning and sort of getting those plans off the ground. So hopefully we'll draw on some of those experiences. And the better half of the combo is Hannah. Han, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. So I'm Hannah Pretty, been with Welsh Athletics about 3 years now. Before that, in local authority sport development. So I've been working with clubs for a number of years now on development and supporting them. So hopefully I can bring some sort of knowledge to tonight's webinar for you all.
Excellent, thanks, Han. What are we going to cover?
Okay, so what we're going to look at covering, why we need development plans and what we can do to get those written and ready so we can actually implement them. We're going to have a little look at the common mistakes made and how we can try and avoid making these mistakes. Where to start as well. So that can be quite daunting when you're starting out with your development plans for your clubs, because there's sometimes so much you want to do, is trying to narrow it down to start that process. So we're going to look at that, what to include, so what things do you need to have in there, how you're going to do it, the most important part, how are you going to do it, and then we're going to look at what you can do next. So following this webinar, what you can put into place quite quickly to start your planning process. And then, as Chris has mentioned, towards the end we'll do some questions, which is a chance for you guys to ask us some questions, and we'll do a quick summary and close the session.
Excellent, thanks, Han. I think before we set off on the why, I just want to launch a bit of a poll, because we've got a number of people on from lots of different clubs of different sizes as I look through the attendance list. I just want to ask the question around, and if I use club and you're from a group, or group and you're from a club, etc., I kind of tend to use those interchangeably at the moment. So I'll sometimes say club or group or whatever. Does your club or group have a documented development plan? So something that you could say, yes, we have a development plan. So just like to get a bit of a sense of who's currently got one, who's got one that's live and they're underway with. So that should come on the screen.
I feel like we need a countdown clock on this, Chris.
I can see who's voted and who hasn't voted and how many we've got live. So we'll give it just another 5 or 10 seconds or so. So there's still a few people left to vote. Okay, interesting. So we've got 11% say they've got a live documented development plan, and 89 have said that they don't, which is interesting. Did you see that come up on the screen? Because I don't get to see it, so you get to see it go live.
Didn't see the results.
So that is interesting. So why do we have a development plan? I guess the main reason is it identifies a bit of a purpose and a mission in terms of why your club or group is in existence. What are you setting out to do? I think the other key thing is around it helps to focus some of the activities, and I'll touch on some of the common mistakes in a moment that we see when we're looking at club development plans, when we're sitting down, we're working with clubs and groups. Sometimes there's not a focus to those activities, and it's sometimes difficult when there's a lot going on. We know athletics is quite a diverse sport. There's lots of different moving parts, but sometimes it's trying to tackle too much is a bit of a challenge. So the plan should help to focus some of those activities. The other reason it shows ambition and initiative to sort of say, right, actually, for the club that I'm in, this is where we want to go. We know we're quite ambitious. We've got some initiatives that are going on, but it's also for the members to feel that they're part of something that's moving forward. We don't want the sentiment from our members that we're coming into something that's quite stuffy, quite traditional, that's not moving, that's not ambitious and developing. So it helps to set some of that ambition for the members as well, and give them something that they want to be part of. And also it helps with grant funding and grant aid and funding applications, as well as when you're working with different partners. If you're in a shared facility, if you've got a club or a group that sometimes operates in a multi-sport environment, it often helps, especially if you're working with a local sports development department, as clubs often do. It shows them ambition, and it helps with this is where we want to go as a club and an organisation. I get quite a lot of questions around funding, and that's one of the common areas that are included in club development plans. How do we get funding for a new clubhouse, a new piece of equipment, a new high jump bed, something equipment related, or and it's very hard from a governing body perspective to sort of say this is the justification of how we should allocate that funding, or how we should work with funding partners, i.e. Sport Wales or local authorities to allocate those funds. So can I get funding for a new high jump bed, or how many high jumps have you currently got in the club? If you haven't got any, it's hard to argue that. On the flip side, it's saying, okay, where's the plan to say, if we get this piece of equipment, or if we move forward with this initiative or this project, this is the end result. And sometimes having a plan in place really helps with that. So that's another good reason of why. And the club should always have sort of a vision and a mission of where it goes. Just because of that, this is the purpose. This is what my club is all about, and that should be shared with the members, and so that everyone feels a bit confident and they know what they're part of, even if it's quite a simple one. So I guess that's the next question is for those of you that are on the call and you're a committee member, or if you're not a committee member, you're just a member of the club. Do you know what your club's vision or mission is as we move forward? So I'm just going to launch the next poll to see what results come in. More people voting this time. This is good. Do you get to vote, Anne?
No, I've got a thing saying organisers and panelists don't vote.
Okay, so over 80% of people have voted now, which is good. So we'll just give it another 10 seconds to collect those last in. So that's actually a real positive in terms of that response that we've got there. So almost 80% of people know their club's mission and vision, which is absolutely fantastic, because that's one of the stumbling blocks. One of the stumbling blocks of clubs in their planning sometimes is not sharing that vision and mission. So it's great that we've got almost 80% of people that are aware of what that is. Just sharing some of those common mistakes. Obviously, the first one I'll touch on, just because we asked the question about a vision or purpose for the club, is not having that in place. The other main mistakes include trying to do too much. So having a plan that's too big, that's got too much stuff in it, too many tasks, too many actions. Sometimes it becomes overwhelming. And I'll work with clubs on a regular basis that sort of says, and they're really proud. It's really great. And they're like, yeah, we've got our club development plan. Here it is. And they drop a 36, 50 pager on me, and it's like this is what we've got. Look at all these actions. Look at all these things that are doing it, and it just becomes overwhelming. The other common mistake is not asking, and that's on twofold really. First one's not asking your members what they would like to see, where they would like to see the direction of the club. And it's great to see we've got more clubs in the last couple of years moving forward, surveying their members, asking them where they would like to see the club and what developments they would like to see within the club. But I am amazed at the number of clubs that don't do that. Remembering clubs and groups are membership organisations, so it makes sense to listen to what your members want and work with them to try and achieve and realise that. And then your retention figures in your club is likely to go up because you're able to say, you know, you said this, we're doing X, Y, and Z, and that's included in our formal club development planning. So it's key in terms of asking people what you would like to see in the direction they would like to see the club go in. You might always like the results, but it's always good that, and the more engagement you can have, the better. The other thing around not asking, and this is one that we see less often now, but Hannah will recognise this one, is having your club development plan and assigning loads of different tasks to people that you haven't asked whether they're willing to do it. So it's great that you sat down and we've got our development plan now, and it's like, oh yeah, we'll put those names against those ones. They look financially related. Our treasurer can cover those off. So don't remember to ask the people that you're putting within your plan in terms of that action planning, whether they're willing to do it. And the last common mistake is remembering it's like a talent, so it's no good if you don't use it. So having a plan is great, but it needs to be alive. It needs to be a live document that you can use and you can refer to, and it is something that's within a working group or within the committee, etc. That you do. Another one that's come up previously is having that plan. I mentioned about having a big onerous plan or having a plan and saying, yeah, we've got this plan. No one ever looks at it. And I've sat in, the club can remain unnamed, but I've sat in club committee meetings where the club development plan is actually on the formal agenda. It's great. I'm excited. I'm like, okay, we're going to talk about it. But it's down the agenda list. By the time we get there, it's like, how's the club development plan? Yeah, is it still there? Yeah, okay, let's move on. And it's not actually live, or they're not actioning. It's something that's sitting there. So for me, it's like a talent. If you don't use it, it's no good for you. So utilize some of those things. So they're just some of the common mistakes which I'm sure we're all aware of, and I'm sure we wouldn't fall into those traps, but just some of those traps to try and avoid. But where do we start?
So, as Chris has mentioned, where to start, you want to have a focus. So looking at what those immediate priorities are, and really drilling down into what you want to work on. So I think we can all agree that this current COVID situation has kind of accelerated a lot of our use of technology within clubs. I know certainly within Welsh Athletics, without this, we perhaps wouldn't be doing all these webinars. And this has been a great tool for us to reach out to our clubs and members. So thinking about the COVID situation and having a look at the need now for clubs to become cashless, because we're trying to reduce the amount of physical contact with people and the germ spreading, etc. So looking at becoming cashless is a good immediate priority. That is something quite quick that you can implement. Do check out I'm going to plug it, do check out our Becoming Cashless webinar on our YouTube channel. The next thing is to think about what the biggest threat to the club is. So something that is a big issue that's coming up quite immediately, is that something we need to focus on as a priority? And we're going to talk a little bit in a little while on about how you can which tools you can use to try and make this better. What are the things that are needed and what are the nice to do's? So are there any quick wins? So we talked about maybe implementing some cashless systems, things that you can make a difference quickly with, but also you want to look at the long term as well. So there's the small things that you can do early on, but then bigger things you can look to do further on in the future. We've seen a lot of clubs through lockdown using this time to celebrate their volunteers or key workers, and that's a really nice way to look at retaining your volunteers. Quite often in development plans we're looking at the personnel and the volunteers and how we can keep them within our clubs, And sometimes it's as simple as a dedicated thank you to them across your club social media. That really goes a long way and really values them. So is there anything like that that you can do within your club? It's not always going to be glamorous, so you might not always be planning for awards evenings or exciting developments with your clubhouse. It is about looking at the stuff that is really important but is perhaps a bit dry, so reviewing your safeguarding policies, looking at your governance structures, are they fit for purpose? And whilst that isn't the glamorous and the fun and the sexy stuff, it is stuff you really need to prioritise, because that's the elements that, if there are other issues further down the line, if you've not got a stable constitution, then that's often where clubs can trip up. So I've mentioned they're the key areas to look at that might not be as exciting, but governance, policies and procedures, the legal status of your club. So that's become quite important with some of our clubs that have looked to get asset transfers for their facilities now. So having the correct legal status has been instrumental in that. And you can look at these through in more detail on our club's portal. On to the next slide. There we go. So hopefully this screen's not too unfamiliar to most of you. The top left picture on your screen is the home page for the club's portal. So this is where you'll affiliate your club each year. So on here, I'm just going to talk through the review categories. So this is a really useful tool for you guys to access and help with you writing your development plans. So as you can see in the top right, there's 3 different review categories, which are then broken down into further areas. We'll just think about the planning one, which I've pulled up here. So I think there's about 10 questions or so. And with each question, you can see on the bottom right there's a traffic light system. So as you go through and answer these questions, you will sort of be graded, if you like, on your answers. So the red ones are things that are immediate priority. So coming back to looking at priorities for where you start, this can really help you identify those. The orange ones are things that are you're okay at, but maybe we could work to improve them. And then the green ones, great, you're doing really well. So you can see the questions there. So it's a nice visual for you guys to have a look at once you've completed one of these reviews, to see how you're doing and the status of that area. We move on to the next slide.
I wish I could. I think
it's a bit of a delay. And it's so hot in here. I'm sorry I keep putting my glasses up my nose, but they keep sliding down because I'm so warm. So on to the next one. So as I mentioned, the questions, when you answer them, they'll give you a little bit of feedback. So on each of the questions, once you've answered, you get a little bit of feedback around what you've answered. So that provides you with a little bit more guidance as to where you could start implementing some changes, and it gives you some ideas of what you could implement. Now, the great thing about this review system on the club's portal is you can actually download the review, if you like, and it puts it into a really nice action plan document for yourselves. So on the top right photograph there, you'll see there's answers that have been, questions that have been answered. And you can actually select to display the summary report for all those questions. So what that will do is, this is showing the Constitution review, just because there's more questions answered on it, so it populated the action plan a bit more for me. So you can display this summary report, and then in the bottom left screen you can see, I know it's a little bit small, but you can actually download that as a certain document. So whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, PDF or a Word document, whichever works better for you and your committee. But you can actually tick, if you're like me and you like a to-do list to tick off things, you can see which tasks need to be done, and you can allocate them to certain people as well. Again, make sure you ask them before you allocate them, but you can work your way through your action plan then, so it will summarise everything from that review really nicely for you. The bottom right photo there is just about our resource library. So in that section there's lots of resources to help you with your development of, just for your development plans, but also in terms of developing your club fully as well. So looking at all the different aspects of your club, from governance to people to the legal status. So make sure you check that out as well for lots of useful information. Okay, Chris.
Thanks, Helen. In terms of what to include, and I guess for me, the planning element should, you've got some tools that Hannah's just spoken through. Then for me, the planning element should be quite simple. I'm quite a simple person, as those that know me will testify. So it should be fairly simple. And what should it include? It should be what you're trying to achieve. You mentioned about the club's vision and mission. What is it related to that, or is it a specific project or initiative for a particular focus? So what are you trying to achieve, and try and be smart about it. So we're often in coaching and leading, we're talking about smart goal setting, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, having a time phased approach to it. It is what it should be included. So definitely about what you're trying to do and where you're trying to get to. The next element is how you're going to do it. So what projects or initiatives are you going to do, or what's required in order for you to get what you want, or get where you need to go. And then we can look at prioritizing those areas related to what you're trying to achieve. Who we mentioned earlier on around some of the common mistakes. Who is actually going to be responsible for it in terms of forming that working group? And I'd always advocate forming a working group that can feed directly in. Hannah mentioned governance and structures, but it is good to have a group of more eyes on something and say, okay, we can share some responsibilities. We can work closely to identify who is best placed in order to help implement or drive this initiative or this project forward related to what we're going to do. So the who is really important. The other element of who that I'd include is also look around. Who else has done it successfully in your locality, across Wales, across the UK, across the world? Find examples of where what you're trying to achieve has been done in other clubs. And we have the club's conference every year where we try to showcase good practice. We try and learn from what other sports are doing all of the time. So who's done something that you're trying to achieve, and who's done it successfully, and go and ask them and interact with and engage them. Clubs sometimes sit in silos. Where we've seen clubs really develop and have real success in recent years is clubs that are willing to go and ask the club down the road, or phone someone up from another club and go, we've got this problem. We had that problem. We can help you solve it. This is what we did. This was our approach. It might not work for you, but certainly the sharing of ideas is always really important. And the last one for me is always identifying a timeline. When do you want this to be achieved by? If you leave things open-ended, they drift. There's always reasons that other things get in the way. We're all busy people. We're all working with key volunteers, and we're asking more and more of our central volunteers. So it's also looking at when do you want to achieve it by. So always have that timeline element to it, so it gives it a bit more of a sharper focus. Unless I guess the last one that's not on there is looking at what potential resources do you need in order to move that forward. Is it some money from the club? Is it some looking at external funding? Is it something that you're looking to do in terms of a particular project or initiative? So the one that's not on there is probably that resources element, that identify some of the resources that are required and needed in order for you to move that forward. For how?
Okay, so for how. So we've mentioned the club's portal already in terms of a tool that's available for you guys to use. We're going to run through some of the other things that are available as well. So there's Club Solutions, which is a Sport Wales initiative, and they've got lots of resources. And then Chris is going to look at some other simple models that you can use in-house to help with the planning. And then contact us. We're here. Contact us. There's other people like me covering each of the regions across Wales, so we're more than happy to sit down and chat with you, whether that's virtually at the moment or through face-to-face socially distanced contact. But we're more than happy to support you, and this is what we're here for. So we've mentioned the club's portal. This is just a refresher for if you've not been on it or unsure how to access it. When these slides go live, you'll be able to click on the link there. So the Club Serve is a really great tool for you guys, and there's up to 10 licenses, so that's perfect for a club committee or a working group. So 10 of you can have access to log in onto this. So we've already looked at this screen, but just to highlight some of the other things that are on here. Obviously, there's the club affiliation, which hopefully everybody is aware of. That's there every year for you to update, but please don't just leave it until April the 30th to do it. It is meant to be a live document, so you can update that as and when people move on or you have new club officers join. So the idea is we've always got a live database of contacts for your club. There's lots of club reviews, as we've mentioned, so there's 7 different club reviews to help guide and hone in on certain aspects of your club management and development processes, and over 40 online training videos now to talk you through and walk you through various aspects. So check those out, particularly for areas that are perhaps a bit trickier. So the legal and tax status stuff is something that I find particularly useful in that video because it's something I'm not as clued up on. There's also an area for your club documents. So this is useful for you as a committee or a working group to share documents there. You can access them and update them and leave them ready for other people to see. So that's also a live document. And also the Club Resource Centre. So lots of resources on there. We're trying to put as much on as possible for you to access. We're looking at adding some COVID specific resources as well to really help you guys at the moment. So the Club Solutions website that I mentioned, so this is how you can access it. They've got lots of resources on there. You can see on the left hand side all the different themes and aspects that they work on. Again, the links will be live when you access the slides afterwards. They're also on Twitter, so you can follow directly on Twitter, and they're often putting things up there, useful resources or training courses. They have quite a lot of training courses, so really check them out because it's a useful resource to have at your fingertips.
Yeah, I was Club Solutions. I've got one tomorrow night actually, so around cashless and stuff. But I've also sat on one last week, which was absolutely great, and really interactive and really engaging. I guess the other thing that springs to mind is people say, you know, there's too much of it. You're saying keep it simple. There's almost too much for us. There's almost too much for us to do. So I just want to run through some other simple models or other tools that you can use. And the first one is, people have heard me talk about this, the 3x3 model. 3 things that you're going to stop doing, 3 things that you're going to do differently, and 3 things that you start doing. The basics of setting out some of your club development planning. You sometimes see them in a different order in terms of 3 things that you're going to start doing, new initiatives, things that you're going to start. I always talk around this model the other way around. So it's very hard to carry on doing what you're doing. Everyone's busy with the day-to-day running of the club or their group and things associated with that. So maybe start with 3 things that you're going to stop doing. What are the 3 things that are taking a lot of time but you're not getting a great return from? So maybe 3 things that you'll stop doing first. Things that you're going to do differently. Hannah mentioned the quick wins a little earlier on. What are things that you could tweak or do differently or have a different approach to that will start to see some progress? And then 3 things that are new, 3 things that you're going to do differently that you're going to start doing that will have a really great impact. The other one is the traditional SWOT analysis. People have seen this in many different guises. So identifying the strengths, the weaknesses, what are the opportunities and what are the threats. But sometimes that's just a quick, simple model that you can start with and have a discussion around. And it's always good. I've seen this work really well where people go away in isolation and work on it. I talk about working groups a lot. But it's great to get people to go away, to think about your club or your group, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, opportunities and threats, etc. And then bring those to the table and come together so you get a collective response, and that's when it works really well. And the other model that we talk about is that WHOOP model. quite a lot. What is the wish? What's the outcome? What's going to happen? What are the obstacles are in the way? And of course, that important element in terms of planning. So getting that across the line. So what are the things that really drive you and are linked to your vision, mission, where your club wants to go. So there are just some other models and other tools that you can potentially utilise and use moving forward. The other things I want to highlight are some resources. So Be Active Wales Fund, we've had a number of clubs engage with that. So the Sport Wales Fund, please do get your applications in. There's different phases to this in terms of protecting clubs that are at risk and preparing. You'll see, you probably won't be able to see that on screen, but protect is around protecting clubs that are particularly at risk, and preparing is around phases that are going to get your club back up and running and back active. So whether it's increased hygiene, whether it's increased track hire, whether it's increased facility hire because you're now dealing with smaller groups or having to facilitate longer club sessions, do get your applications into the Be Active Wales Fund. We've had a number of clubs utilise it already, and the turnaround is really quick. So it is a great resource. So I think that's the end of the main elements. We've had questions, but do spend the next couple of minutes thinking of some questions. If you've got any questions for myself, if you've got any questions for Hannah, do pop them in the chat box, and we'll try and cover off as many of those as possible. And of course, as we say, if you don't want to ask a question tonight, but you want to follow up, then that's absolutely fine as well. We're always, as Hannah said, we're available. We like contact. We like people to get in touch and engage with us. So I'm going to open up the question box just to have a look at those that have come in already. I think we'll start with one for you, Han. I like the clubs. Thanks, Hannah, for the overview of the clubs portal. How do I get my club login details for the Welsh Athletics Clubs portal?
Good.
I'll let you go for that one, Hannah.
Good question. So the easiest way at the moment is either to email myself or clubsportal@welshathletics.org, and we'll get back to you with the login details. The way the process works is you'll have a club ID and password that is unique to your club. You will sign in with that club ID and password, and that verifies that you're attached to the club. You can then follow the instructions to set up your own login and password. So each new person from your club that wants to have access to it will need to go through the same process. But yeah, basically email.
Excellent, thanks, Han. We've got another one that come in. A couple of questions that are quite similar. So I'll run. How do I prioritise my club development planning when everything feels like a priority? And then that's, I guess, linked to that one. Try and cover that one off. What are the most common areas that are included in a club development plan that you've seen? I'm happy to share with those. How do you prioritise? It's a difficult one, but I guess it's looking at what resource you've got, and then having that long list of things that you might need to do, and trying to almost rank them from 1 to 250 or 1 to 3 in the first instance. Say what are you gonna focus on, because you can't prioritise everything. It's one of the things that we get. And we have a lot of conversations in common areas like, this is a priority, well, that's another priority for the club, that's another priority. And I talked earlier on a little bit about around having a big, onerous, sort of all-encompassing development plan. Without some priorities, it's very difficult. So I guess linked to that, with the other question we've had is around what are the most common areas. I guess in my experience, it would be, what do clubs really need? And normally it's more volunteers or more bodies are the key areas. So the most common things that we see are more volunteers. Always, I've never been to a club and they've said, oh, do you know what, I'm tripping over myself with volunteers here. We've got too many people to help out. So can you take them off my hands? That's not happened to date. More funding and access to funding is often on there. How do we generate more funds? We get sponsors, apply for grant aid, etc. And sometimes having that vision focus, that the development plan can help with that. And the other one that we see is around the two areas that we see is around members and building capacity. So we've got some of our younger groups and clubs are saying, you know, we're just growing exponentially at the moment. How do we build capacity? How do we get more leaders, more coaches? How do we facilitate that? And sometimes that's whether there's a link to funding, whether it's previously Community Chest, now the Be Active Wales Fund throughout this period. It is great, but it needs someone responsible for putting those applications in, for identifying who those leaders of the future are going to be to build your capacity. And we see a lot around membership and around how do I get more members. So we've got some clubs growing too quickly, or not too quickly, but not able to control that growth. The other one is around how do we get more members, and there seems to be a drive around getting more members. We always need more of a particular age group from a track and field perspective, and I think that needs to be put in context of well, what are you doing to retain your members? How well are you looking after them? Because if you hold on to more of your members, you don't have to go so hard in terms of the recruitment. Yeah, the recruitment is important, but we get a higher, particularly at certain age groups, we get a high churn rate, and it's perhaps having to think about what can we do to retain the members that we've got. Therefore, the constant need and drive to recruit more and more and more and more doesn't become as high up the priority list. There will always be that need to recruit more, but having those that you can hold on to a bit longer would be really nice and complement what you're trying to achieve, which is great. We've got one that's coming here, really interesting one. In your opinion, should there be separate plan for juniors and seniors? Han, what do you think?
I think there definitely needs to be attention paid to both. Juniors and senior athletes are very different. So one of the clubs I worked with, we actually did have a junior academy and then the seniors, and we did develop a specific plan for the juniors because it was a different cohort of people, different people involved in managing that. So I think there's definitely benefit in doing that if you've got the capacity to. Otherwise, I think you just need to be conscious of how it all streams together, I think. So what's the pathway from juniors into the seniors, and how do we plan for that? So in terms of coaches, have you got enough coaches that are going to oversee from the juniors as they come up into the seniors? In terms of personnel supporting that, team managers, etc. So I think it's probably on a case-by-case basis, but I think it's definitely important to bear in mind all of the members in the club and how you're going to, I guess, develop and improve for them. I don't know if you want to add anything, Chris.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say in the main, where you've got a junior and a senior section, you usually have separate development plans. That has both strengths and weaknesses. I think as long as it's agreed for by the committee, and we talk about different working groups for juniors and seniors potentially, but as long as there's the intent, because where sometimes it falls down to having the separate plan is the overall club committee or the governance of the sort of almost ignores the junior section or ignores the senior section because they're smaller and it's less of a priority for us. So I think as long as there's buy-in all around, then I think having two separate plans seems to make more sense, because you'd normally got people that are passionate in certain areas and they can attract other people with passion to develop those. So I think that's a great question around juniors and seniors. Thanks for that. It's not directly linked to that, but has come in there. I'm going to put this one to you, Hannah. I'd like to develop a club development plan. How do I convince the committee it's a good idea?
Well, I guess from that you need to explain to them what, in terms of what we were talking about with ambition and funding. There's so many reasons why you do need to do it, even if it's just so that you can see as a club where you want to get to and how you're going to get there. I'd hope that most committees aren't stagnant and they don't want to just carry on doing things the same way they've always done them. I'd hope that a lot of people now and a lot of clubs are wanting to develop and become the best that they can, and to ensure that their clubs are thriving. So I guess it's around really laying out those the importance of having a development plan to them, and money talks, I suppose. So sometimes that's the best way to say, if we do have a good plan and we can show how we're going to spend this money, but also what that means for us as a club, what impact that's going to have, I think that will certainly generate some buy-in.
Yeah, good. I think obviously some people have seen the portal for the first time, which is great that we're raising the awareness of it. Linked to that, we've had a question: do you? I like this bit where I ask the questions, because I read them out and you get to answer them. Great.
And I answer them.
Do you have any templates available for a club development plan? I guess that's linked to some of the stuff that we've sort of about what you could and should potentially include. But what about templates?
Yeah, I guess the easiest way is to work through the club reviews on the portal, because it will create that for you. It will download your answers specific to your club into an action plan or a development template, if you like. So I think that's probably the easiest way, because it will be very specific to you. There are also many templates you can find online, I'm sure, but the benefit of this is that they will be specific to your club and to what you've answered, so it saves you having to fill in the details on a separate template.
Yeah, and I think Hans mentioned the club solutions element. That's a great resource for those that I know we've got some groups on here that perhaps are not affiliated to most of those that haven't got access to the portal and the reviews. So jump onto the club solutions. If you're from a club or you're from a group, jump onto the club solutions and have a look at some of the resources they've got on there. There's some great online tools, some e-learning courses, etc. That it is a good resource developed by Sport Wales under that banner, which is great. I think that's it for the questions that are coming in. So that's the end of the grid. You'll be pleased to hear, Han. Look on. In terms of I guess takeaways from our perspective. So probably like not so much of a summary, is just some takeaways from us, I guess. The top tips from Hannah and myself would probably be form a working group. It shouldn't be one person. Don't set it off to someone just for one person to have a look at. More eyes are better than just a single person. Keep it simple. I've said around keeping it simple and fairly succinct, and try not to make it too onerous or have too many outcomes or objectives. Make it SMART, so using that acronym again. Identify who. Remember, we talked about who in terms of who's going to be responsible for that. Is it within the working group? Is it other people, other volunteers that you can come in and ask to do some tasks? Also identify who else is doing some good work in those areas. Make sure the project is manageable, so you've got the right number of projects for the resources that you've got, and you've got a clear expectation. And based on the poll that we launched earlier, in terms of 80% of people haven't got a development plan or documented development plan. So just get going. Start with something. If it's not necessarily going onto the portal, it's using one of the other models, the 3x3 model, the SWOT analysis. Just get going. And I like this quote: a good plan today is better than a perfect plan next week, because you're never gonna get to it unless you get going. It's just make sure you've got something tangible there that you know that you're working towards, and you can always revise it and make it better and learn, of course, by what you're doing. And I guess linked to that army quote above is make sure it's alive. Make sure it's alive and well, and that you're utilising it, and you can. It's something that you can say, we have a plan and it is alive. We've identified the who, what, where, and when, and we know that those projects and initiatives that are in that plan are moving forward. So that's, I guess, those are the key takeaways from us this evening. Unless there's anything else you want to add, Han?
Apologies if you can hear the knocking on my speaker. There's a noisy neighbour somewhere.
Sounds like a complaint to the police. So I guess for us that we've covered off those questions. It's a massive thank you, of course, once again for joining us. Thanks for Hannah, of course, for all the effort and work this evening. It's been absolutely fantastic. As I say, these sessions, the Support Your Club sessions, have gone down well. I have webinars. Is this the end? Do we continue? Are we going to continue with the webinars? Yes, we will, but that'll be based on the feedback that you guys and attendees give us to say this is the content we'd like to see. So massive thanks to Hannah, massive thank you to everyone for giving up your evening and giving us this hour. Appreciate it. It's a glorious evening out there. So once again, massive thank you for your time. If you have enjoyed it, do share via social media, Twitter, Facebook. We like to spread the word. If you haven't enjoyed it, please don't do that. Just say that's 45 minutes lost or 50 minutes lost of my evening, and go for that. But no, on a serious note, do share it via social media. We always like to hear some feedback and spread the word. And of course, the recordings will be on the Welsh Reflection YouTube channel, as with all the other webinars that we've done. And I know people are missing content, and as Hannah said at the start, it's great that we're banking a lot of this content that we can refer people to. And I know that a lot of the sessions are being watched over again, and our comms team are looking at that, to how we can utilize some of those communications and get them out so that more people can engage and listen into some of the stuff that we've been through. But massive thank you, Han. Thanks very much, and hashtag support you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.